started. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for Impact State of Mind. I'm Archana Shah, COO and co-founder of Impact Hub New York Metro Area. Just for those of you who are not familiar, Impact Hub New York Metropolitan Area is a nonprofit that supports entrepreneurs and change makers through programs designed to help impactful ideas succeed. This session is part of Impact State of Mind, a virtual series we created to support and connect the impact community of innovators during the COVID-19 crisis. So thank you very much for joining today's session. I am so excited to introduce you to our CEO and co-founder, Jean-Paul Parmigiani, otherwise referred to as JP, who is co-founder and CEO of Impact Hub New York Metro Area. I'm going to hand this off to one of our other co-founders, Mohammed Faisal, to kick off the chat.
Hi, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good day. I know it's a little chilly outside, so, get inside, bundle up, and get ready for a great session with my man, JP, the CEO and co-founder of Impact Hub NY Metro Area. He's a good friend of mine and a great change maker and innovator. So I look forward to this as much as you guys do. So let's get ready. So first off, I would like to ask, why are you passionate about this work? What is the path that led you to this work, JP?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So I guess just to start, I grew up in New Jersey, in Morristown, which is just outside the city, which had a big impact on my life from the standpoint of always being exposed to the city and understanding the connection and the importance of the city and bringing people together around the world. And it was after 9/11 that I really started, as a teenager, thinking about how I can be impactful in my life and how I can make a difference. And I went from thinking about, becoming a movie director, which was something that I really wanted to do when I was young, to thinking about, well, what is the best way that I can contribute to making the world a better place? Also with the backdrop of 9/11 striking me as a young person, thinking about the capacity of a big country like the US to build positive relationships and really make a difference in different parts of the world where people aren't as fortunate as us to live in such a place of prosperity, or so much prosperity as we have seen as an overall nation. And so that led me on a path to actually going abroad and trying to learn how I can contribute to the diplomatic space. And so I studied international relations and worked on various projects in sub-Saharan Africa, and I was living in East Asia. And I came back to New York to work at the UN for a while, working at in the 63rd General Assembly for a Pacific Island country called Nauru. And it was during graduate school and that I went to in Singapore when the financial crisis was happening in the US and being felt around the world, that it really became evident to me that maybe one of the best ways that I can make a difference would be through entrepreneurship as a vehicle for change, because we were seeing sustainability of projects across the world that were focused on impacts, having aid withdrawn because there wasn't the financing that was there. We were reading a lot in school about initiatives that didn't end up being sustainable because for various reasons. And so I started to look at entrepreneurship as a vehicle for change and decided to study more about entrepreneurship and different ways that scalable solutions could be offered to solve some of the most urgent challenges. And that kind of led me back to Africa when a friend was working on an educational initiative around entrepreneurship in Ghana. And I started to go to Ghana to support that work. And eventually, one of the local people in our community in Accra had mentioned the idea of taking all these entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs who are coming into this educational program and starting a hub, because they needed internet, they needed a place to collaborate, they needed a place to learn more about different aspects of business and so forth. And to me, that was the aha moment, that was the eureka moment, when I was like, oh, this is, building a hub is exactly the kind of work I want to do, because the concept behind it was, we want to empower people who have their own visions for how they want to change their communities. And so to me, it kind of bridged some of my interests in making a difference with sustainable, scalable opportunities, and then also to learn and grow, right? Because hub work kind of has the opportunity to give you to learn about various people, various cultures, thoughts, industries, practices, and so forth. And I guess to wrap that, I did, as that hub became sustainable and was able to stand on its legs, I pivoted back here to work on this project, back where my story kind of began.
Sorry, I muted myself. I had no idea, but yeah, thank you for all that. That was like I kind of knew a little bit about how 9/11 impacted you and about your work in Accra, but for you to really elaborate on that, that was it allowed me to learn a lot more about it. So appreciate that. To stay on that topic on Africa, we have a question from one of the participants. Her name is Kristen, and she asked, I was recently in Accra at the Impact Hub and met your great team there. What can I do to continue to bridge Black people in the US with Impact Hub Accra?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's a question that we've actually been spending a lot of time in the background trying to plan programmatically for our hub here. Because obviously, as one of the major issues that we should be contributing right now is racial and ethnic justice, and various issues related to equality in the metropolitan area, and particularly for African Americans. I think there's a real opportunity as well to plug into entrepreneurial communities and innovation communities on the continent to really be a double win, in terms of being able to economically advance people on both sides. And so we've been looking at different ways to develop programs for 2021 that give people an opportunity to network, between Accra and New York area, so that we can start to understand where some of the synergies are and kind of test that thesis. But in general, I think reaching out to, if you're just generally interested in trying to, engage that community, I recommend reaching out to the team there, because they have the best view on the ecosystem. I mean, the team there really has the best view of the ecosystem in Accra that I know of. And so depending on which angle you want to take within a collaboration, they're a really great resource for finding collaborators, following up with conversations, being introduced to people. So I strongly recommend that. But otherwise, we are hoping in February 2021 to be offering programs that do allow people to network and get to know each other, and also learn a little bit more about, if you're an innovator in New York metropolitan area and you're interested in scaling to a place like Ghana, how do you do it? How do you actually start? What are the things that you have to, that you should know? There's always red tape, and every market has different kinds of red tape. So kind of demystifying that.
And you were mentioning about the networking events in February. That's with the Impact Hub NY Metro, right?
Yeah, so actually, working on a few things. We're working on an Africa Innovation Conference that is specifically around building the ecosystem in New York that's Africa focused and connecting the different groups and resources, of which there are so many in the New York metropolitan area, and connecting them to people in the diaspora, African Americans in particular, who can really benefit from that community, and starting to then connect it as well to the innovators that are in places like Accra. And Impact Hub has other locations and communities across Africa. There are 12 of them outside of Accra. So there's more opportunity for people who are interested in different parts of the continent or are interested in Francophone Africa. So anyway, so the conference will be the first step, of which there will be within it opportunities to have more niche workshops for people who are interested in that kind of work, and that gives us a sense of where we go from there, right? And what's the best way to serve the community.
Thank you, JP. We also have one other follow-up question from Karen, and she asked if there is any volunteer opportunities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So definitely, we have a small team still. We have a great team, but it's a small team, and so we really appreciate any energy from anyone that they want to put into helping us build out some of these initiatives, because with greater capacity, we can do more. And it's also a great opportunity to get involved in the organization and to meet different kinds of innovators and stakeholders and just get a sense of, I think one of the best reasons to volunteer for any organization is that you get to know the industry better, and it helps you figure out what you want to do and what you see as your vision. And I know that volunteering has always helped me as, in the very early days, so.
Okay, we have one other follow-up question, which is tell us about what makes you excited about creating opportunities post-COVID-19.
Yeah, so I think we're always trying to look for the silver lining in the situations that we're in, and this has been a really terrible year and for a lot of reasons, but there have been some silver linings, and one of them is that every time there's a crisis in New York, there seems to be a reinvention of New York. And so with the reinvention comes the opportunity to address things that haven't been addressed that needs to be addressed, as we continue to try and move the dial on equality, for example, of different kinds, but then also building new economies, bringing people into a new economy. We know that new economies will be built by emerging technologies, and that it's going to transform over the next 15 to 20 years. Everything that we've thought about in terms of entrepreneurship, and also humans' role within the sphere of some of these technologies, because they're so transformative. And so part of, I think, the opportunity in New York is to think about, in the New York metropolitan area, is to think about how we can bring these opportunities to engage with emerging technologies to everybody. So not just, and I know that the New York Economic Development Corporation is really interested in that too, and excited about the opportunity. No matter who you are, no matter what community you're a part of, no matter how economically advanced you are, no matter what kind of business you have, you should be able to have access to and understand how you can participate in these new economies that haven't been built yet fully. So there's room for you to participate later. So I think that's fundamentally one of the things that I'm most excited about coming out of this crisis. But then obviously it's been a real time of reflection, I think, for everyone in terms of how do we integrate better. And I say that as someone who's from New Jersey originally. How do we integrate other parts of the metropolitan area more effectively into the dynamic core at the center, thinking about the suburbs and some of the smaller tier cities that are in New Jersey and Connecticut and the lower Hudson Valley that are actually really cool places with great people, that somehow are left out of maps and don't have the same access and don't have the same visibility in Manhattan. So that too, I think, is a great opportunity coming out.
Okay, so I'm gonna stick to another set of questions which are related to COVID-19, and then we're gonna go back to a question about Impact Hub in Accra. So these two questions are from Jennifer Fong, and she asks, "What are some startups predictions for 2021?"
Startups predictions. That's interesting. So, we obviously we've been speaking to a lot of different people in the innovation space in different industries, and it's an education just to start to understand how they see the world, especially now as it's changing. And one of the curiosities that we always come to, no matter who the conversation is with, is what's everything going to look like post-crisis? When is the crisis going to end? When are things going to be back to normal? What does this look like? And then, as we're speaking to health professionals, what is what's the reality of any vaccine that comes out, like we're now seeing, in terms of when people will take it, who will take it, when we're actually going to be able to do things in person again, which obviously affects our work very much, because we're all about the people. And so being able to meet in person is important and helpful, because this is how we connect at the highest level, I think. And so what kind of struck me from the very beginning was, even in March and April, some of the people who are at the forefront of health, health innovation, who are in our community, were saying that this is going to be a few years. This isn't going to be like a few weeks, as we're all discussing and thinking. And that was a bitter pill to swallow, to think of, like, oh, okay, well, but probably June and July things will get better, and so forth. But from what we're hearing now, and no one knows, but what I'm hearing is that things will be probably back to normal in 2022, with maybe in 2021 a step between where we've been and where we would like to be. And innovators are also seeing the opportunity to think about wider markets. I think this is a trend that we've seen, where people are also thinking about how their business doesn't have to be just in New York. If now they've gone virtual, or they're partially virtual, like how can they tap into markets and different parts of the country or different parts of the world, trying to figure out what that means in terms of the value proposition. Is the value proposition still so strong? Does that prevent them from some of the branding that they might have initially chosen, that has designated them as a local first kind of institution? And of course, like, what's the environmental impact, depending on what the company is? So I think it's all, I think there's a real scramble to figure out how technology can be, play a part in their work, and what that means for, the social mission that they're dedicated to.
So I have a question. I'm gonna follow up with one of the things that you said about, like, businesses being able to expand now as they go virtually to markets that they otherwise would not. What role can us at Impact Hub New York Metro play in connecting up the ecosystem of Connecticut to New York City to New Jersey and parts of Pennsylvania as well?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'm really passionate about it. Being someone from New Jersey, my exposure to some of the the challenges in connectivity of the metro area are just real. Everything from some of the infrastructure between, like, the highways and public transportation, to the know-how, the knowledge of areas outside of the core from New Yorkers and so forth. And so I think the opportunity for Impact Hub is really to embrace the different communities, in terms of the people who are working in silos, to build innovative communities in different parts of the region. So, for example, New Haven, Connecticut, which is at the edge of the metropolitan area, there is such a strong entrepreneurial scene that is there, and there's so many social innovators there, and there's also a lot of support for innovators through some of the Yale that's there, and some of the community organizations that have been built up. And so there's so many examples of that between New Haven and Bridgeport and White Plains and Newark and Trenton, all these places where I think as a force for connectivity, we want to bring all of those organizations into a big pool for collaboration so that we can understand, together how we can, collaborate more, how we can work on finding solutions to challenges more. And what I think is really unfortunate is that there hasn't been enough of that. And I think part of that is we are such a competitive region of the world, right? The Bay, the San Francisco Bay is known for its open culture, which has, that's a stereotype and there are limitations to that. But I think there's something to be learned about openness, community, really understanding that we're all here trying to solve the same problems and we should be working together. And that we really want to embrace as an institution, because we see that it's somewhere that there's a gap that we can fill. And we see the real value in doing that, right? Like, how do we create more visibility in Manhattan for innovators who are coming from Newark and Bridgeport and White Plains and all this, right? Who may not have the same access. Maybe investors aren't, going to these places to meet entrepreneurs, but they should know about them and they would be interested. How can we use this as a tool to help educate people about, what's happening in outer boroughs, right? Where they may not go, deep within Queens or deep within Brooklyn. They might go to Prospect Park, but have they been to Flushing, right? And in Queens. So questions like that I think are really important. And some of the the research that's come out in recent years is that for New York to continue to succeed as a city and continue to be such a leader, there's a real opportunity to start integrating more with the region around it. So that's my 2 cents on that front.
I think you really made a great point on that. So this is another question from Jennifer. It's, what are the top 3 skill sets startups need to survive during a pandemic?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Certainly adaptability, number one. And we're seeing that maybe the opportunity in some of the programming that we're planning for 2021 should include just adaptability in general as a vertical within the programs to address. Right. So we know that right now we have multiple crises, right? We have the economic crisis, the COVID crisis, we have a racial justice crisis, we have an environmental crisis, we have so many we have so many crises happening. So even as and we have a climate crisis that can also affect and has in the past affected our region. And so I think building up resiliency and as a skill is maybe the most important that we can try to help people think about. And what that looks like is scenario planning. That looks like the ability to pivot in models, not be overly reliant on one aspect of the business. It means staying up to date and being knowledgeable about the wide spectrum of issues that are affecting your industry, so that you can tackle them over time. I think that is probably very important. And then as well, we all use so many technologies all the time. We are on all these platforms, but are we using them like pros, or are we using them, like me using Twitter doesn't mean I'm a technologist, right? But how can I use the existing platforms better and use them more effectively to increase my impact, and also stay on top of some of these opportunities that younger crowds are certainly embracing and understanding and learning from. So I think the other one is leveraging the existing technologies. And then I think the third skill that's just always something on the top of minds of innovators is how to think about funding, right? I mean, especially in the New York metro area where everything is so expensive, when you run out of funding, a lot of times, you're done, right? And for some people we've seen, that could be like a month. They give themselves a month to think, like runway, to do something. And so I think holistically being able to understand your financial situation and tandem with opportunities to fundraise that are unique to social innovators that people have not thought about, and like how to make that like a culture, of lifelong learning and incorporating that into the planning of whatever initiatives they're working on. I think that would be the third one, just off the top of my head.
Thank you, JP. Just as a follow-up to that same question, this is from Aurora. She asked, what's the best skill that entrepreneurs can learn from this pandemic?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to adaptability and resiliency. I mean, for sure. And hopefully there won't be another major challenge coming up soon that people have to jump around, but that one definitely.
Thank you. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Here's another question from Aurora, and this is circling back to about your work in Ghana, which is, what did you learn in Ghana that has been helpful to build the community in NY? And what are the main differences and similarities between the two communities?
Wow, that's a really great question. And I'm very thankful to be able to answer that and think to that for a moment. So, I think, I went to Ghana with this idea to, contribute. But one thing that I wasn't expecting was how much, Ghana would impact me. It was certainly a two-way street, and I wasn't expecting to fall in love with Ghana as I had. I think what Ghana taught me, actually really relevant for this work, was the power of community. I mean, I think Ghana nails it in community. These, people in Ghana, everybody knows each other. People are so respectful of each other. There's such a beautiful culture of helping people out, of engagement between people. This is what really made the Impact Hub in Accra special. And the reason that it happened is just, it's really embedded in the culture. There's like a culture of caring that I think is, and an interconnectedness where, everyone is family to some degree. It's just very powerful. And I think that's really relevant for New York, where everyone tends to be so busy, where people are often very transient because people are coming in and out. You make a bunch of friends and then they move to different parts of the world and then they're coming and going. And so I think those are some lessons to draw from that are really powerful. I think New York and Accra, as far as what's like different and the challenges, in Ghana you have some structural challenges if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to succeed, where you may not have consistent electricity, and you might get stuck in traffic in a way that is very different from even the experience here, or you might find some barriers in accessibility of really good internet, and these problems are being worked on for sure, and major progress on that front. But I think the challenges in New York that are really different is that everything moves so fast. And for people who are starting initiatives, I mean, they're like, by definition, they're usually small teams. And so you have to run really fast to make it. And I think that's one of the key differences. I think one of the things that I think unites them is that people in Ghana and people in the New York metropolitan area are very creative, very innovative. They're used to finding ways around, barriers to get things done, are used to expecting that they're going to have to persevere, they're going to have to show up. And I think that's probably. One of the things that really unites them, why I think New Yorkers love Accra so much, and why people from Accra really love New York as well, is that they can identify with that, this like ambition to do something, this acknowledgement that there are things that are have to be overcome.
Thank you so much, JP. I hope everyone enjoyed this session as much as I did. Thank you for joining us. Please follow us and share this with your networks, and stay safe during the upcoming holiday season. And take care. Thank you so much, JP.
Thank you so much. It was really great to speak to all of you.